Welcome to Sleep and Learn English from Stories. Tonight we have a wonderful story for you called Life in a Quiet Village. This story is designed to help you relax, improve your English vocabulary, and drift off into a peaceful sleep. Find a comfortable position, close your eyes, and let the story guide you into a state of deep relaxation. Just listen to the words and let your mind create the beautiful scenes. There's no need to try hard to understand every single word. Simply let the language flow over you. Now let's begin our journey. In a small, forgotten corner of the countryside, nestled among rolling green hills and whispering forests, lay the village of Meadowbrook. Time in Meadowbrook seemed to move at its own gentle pace, unhurried by the world outside. The houses were made of old stone, with thatched roofs that bloomed with moss and wildflowers. Each home had a garden overflowing with colorful flowers and vegetables, buzzing with the happy sound of bees. Our story follows a young woman named Clara. Clara had grown up in a bustling city, a place of constant noise and endless rushing. The tall buildings blocked the sun, and the air was always thick with the smell of traffic. Feeling lost and overwhelmed, she decided to leave it all behind. She packed a single suitcase and bought a one-way ticket to the countryside, searching for something she couldn't quite name. She found herself in Meadowbrook, where she rented a small cottage at the edge of the village, overlooking a field of golden wheat. The first few weeks were a challenge. The quiet was so deep it felt loud to her ears, used to the city's constant hum. The darkness at night was absolute, broken only by the shimmering light of the moon and a sea of brilliant stars she had never truly seen before. She felt a little lonely, a stranger in a world that seemed to have its own secret rhythm. Her neighbor was an elderly woman named Mrs. Gable. Mrs. Gable had lived in Meadowbrook her entire life. Her face was a map of wrinkles, each one telling a story of laughter and time. She had kind, twinkling eyes and hands that were always busy, either kneading dough, tending to her roses, or knitting warm scarves. One morning, Mrs. Gable appeared at Clara's door, holding a basket. "Good morning, dear," she said, her voice warm like honey. "I baked some fresh bread and thought you might like some, and a jar of my gooseberry jam." Clara was touched by the simple act of kindness. In the city, she barely knew her neighbors' names. She invited Mrs. Gable inside, and they sat in her small kitchen, sharing the warm bread and sweet jam. Mrs. Gable told Clara stories about the village, about the changing seasons, the annual harvest festival, and the families who had lived there for generations. She spoke of the forest as if it were a living being, full of ancient secrets and wisdom. Inspired by Mrs. Gable, Clara started to explore her new home. She began taking long walks every morning. She would follow the winding path that led into the woods, where sunlight filtered through the leaves, creating dancing patterns on the ground. She learned to identify the different bird songs, the cheerful chirp of the robin, the gentle coo of the wood pigeon, and the melodic call of the blackbird. She discovered a hidden stream, its water crystal clear and cold, where she would sit for hours, just listening to the sound of it bubbling over smooth stones. Slowly, the village began to reveal its charms to her. She learned that the postman, Mr. Harris, also delivered the local gossip along with the mail. She found out that the baker, a large man with a flour-dusted apron, started his day before the sun rose to ensure everyone had fresh bread for breakfast. She met the blacksmith, a strong, quiet man whose hammer rang out like a bell throughout the day, fixing tools and farm equipment. Clara started her own garden. At first, she didn't know what she was doing. Her first attempts were clumsy, and many of her seedlings didn't survive. Mrs. Gable would often come over, offering advice with a gentle smile. "Talk to your plants, dear," she'd say. "They like a bit of encouragement." Clara felt silly at first, but she started whispering to her tomato plants and singing to her sunflowers. To her surprise, her garden began to thrive. Soon, she had an abundance of fresh vegetables, and her small cottage was surrounded by bright, cheerful flowers. One of the biggest events in Meadowbrook was the annual summer fair. The entire village participated. There were games, food stalls, and competitions. Clara decided to enter the jam-making contest. She spent days picking the ripest berries from the hedgerows and perfecting her recipe, a secret blend of strawberries and wild mint she had discovered on one of her walks. On the day of the fair, the village green was alive with activity. Children with painted faces ran around, their laughter mixing with the sound of a local folk band. The air smelled of freshly cut grass, popcorn, and grilled sausages. Clara nervously placed her jar of jam on the judging table, next to dozens of others. When the time came to announce the winner, the village mayor stood on a small wooden stage. "And the blue ribbon for the best jam," he announced, his voice booming, "goes to our newest resident, Clara." A warm round of applause erupted from the crowd. Clara's face flushed with surprise and happiness. Mrs. Gable gave her a big hug. "I knew you had it in you, dear," she whispered. That day, Clara didn't just win a blue ribbon. She felt like she had finally become a part of the village. She was no longer a stranger, but a neighbor, a friend. As the seasons changed, so did Clara. The vibrant greens of summer gave way to the fiery reds and golds of autumn. The villagers worked together to bring in the harvest. Clara helped pick apples in the orchard, her hands stained with juice, her heart full. In the evenings, they would gather for community dinners, sharing food and stories around a large bonfire. Winter arrived, blanketing the village in a soft layer of white snow. The world became even quieter. Clara loved to sit by her fireplace, a warm cup of tea in her hands, watching the snowflakes drift down outside her window. She learned to knit from Mrs. Gable, and together they made scarves and hats for the village children. The long winter nights were not lonely, but peaceful and cozy. They were a time for rest and reflection. When spring returned, it felt like a magical rebirth. The trees burst into blossom, and the fields were dotted with newborn lambs. Clara had now lived in Meadowbrook for a full year. She had come to the village seeking peace, and she had found it. But she had also found so much more. She had found a community, a connection to nature, and a sense of belonging she never knew she was missing. The city, with its noise and rush, felt like a distant dream. Here, in Meadowbrook, her life was simple, but it was rich and full. Her days were measured not by clocks and deadlines, but by the rising and setting of the sun, the changing of the seasons, and the simple joys of a shared meal or a walk in the woods. One sunny afternoon, Clara was sitting in her garden, sketching the flowers in a small notebook. Mrs. Gable joined her, carrying 2 glasses of lemonade. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the butterflies dance among the blooms. "You seem happy here, Clara," Mrs. Gable said softly. Clara looked up from her sketchbook, a genuine smile lighting up her face. "I am," she replied. "I feel like I've finally come home." She realized the quiet she had once found so unsettling was now a source of comfort. The darkness was a canvas for the stars, and the loneliness she had feared was replaced by the warmth of true friendship. In the quiet village of Meadowbrook, Clara had not just found a new place to live, she had found herself. She had learned that a happy life isn't about having more, but about appreciating the simple, beautiful things that are all around us. And that was the greatest lesson of all. Thank you for joining me for tonight's story. I hope the tale of Clara and her life in Meadowbrook has brought you a sense of peace and tranquility. As you continue to relax, let the story's gentle images and words guide you into a deep and restful sleep. May your dreams be as peaceful as a quiet village morning. Until next time, good night and sleep well.